I'll call the meeting to order at 5:34, 5:33. What's that clock? Oh, we're
That now we broke again.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
So we really don't know.
Right.
Because we can't average at 33. All right, silence our phones. When your phones ring, it's very important. You're all set to go? Yes, good. All right, so reorganization of the select board. A, chairperson.
somebody needs to make a motion to elect somebody for the chair.
Okay, I move to elect Josh Laughlin as our chairperson.
Should we move a whole slate, perhaps?
You can do the host,
Sure.
yeah, if you know there's not gonna be,
I don't think there's going to be any discussion.
there's only 3
Unless you're
positions.
bucking.
I have to tell you, I'm here to learn tonight. So
Yeah.
I know nothing,
right.
and I have very few opinions unless you want my money.
So you don't wanna be chair is what you're telling
No,
us?
definitely not. No, I want, definitely.
Clerk's good for you.
Sure, whatever.
Okay.
Well, I could be here at 5:30, it'll be fine.
So I move to elect Josh Laughlin as chairperson, myself as vice chairperson, and David Babbitt as clerk.
And you second that.
There you go, I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to, that I will chair, Laura will vice chair, and David will be our clerk. If there's no further discussion, then all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, unanimous. Look at that. We're off to a good start.
I expect that to continue.
Remember there's two.
All right, do we have adjustments? We do have an adjustment, don't we?
I have one adjustment I would like to add, under select board items,
Okay.
as B,
Mm-hmm.
municipal policies and codes
Oh, yeah.
for VCDP.
Yeah. Which stands for the Vermont Community Development Program.
Program, correct.
Okay, I didn't catch that. It's,
Vermont Municipal, Vermont, no, sorry, I was
Vermont
writing
Community.
municipal. Vermont Community, Vermont Community Development Program.
okay.
Correct.
And what's happening with that? What's the?
There's a,
Yeah, you
if
have-
you haven't seen it, do you have his email and stuff?
I
yet or
do,
not?
yep.
So did you
Yeah.
receive this?
I got an email and it was all about equal opportunity.
Yeah, that's it, it's in
Exactly.
your
Right.
packet. and
So
we'll-
as
Sure.
long as you read it all thoroughly
Yeah.
and you're
I
ready.
read it all and don't have
There
any
you
idea
go.
what it means.
Yeah. Welcome to the club. All right, so we'll work on that. So otherwise, approval of minutes of February 27th and March 5th looked pretty straightforward to me. The one was the
A regular meeting.
previous regular meeting, and then there was the one that was at
Town meeting.
at town meeting.
Yeah, for the treasurer,
Early
yeah.
for that.
That
So
David gonna sign these or
No.
Melissa?
Laura will sign those because David was not
He
present
wasn't
for
there,
that.
yeah.
So,
And he abstained.
Right.
I move to approve the minutes from February 27th, 2019, and March 5th, 2019.
And I will second that, and you weren't present, so you will stay out of it unless you choose to disagree. So it's been moved and seconded, and I'm assuming David's gonna be an abstention, so unless there's any further discussion, those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
All right, minutes approved. Okay, public comment on items not on the agenda. Don't think we have any public here, so we're gonna move past that one. Select board items for discussion and action. Recommendation to appoint animal control as animal control officer Josh Edmond.
It's
That's
EMOND.
what I thought, but it says
Edmond.
EDMOND.
Yes, my mistake,
All right, typo.
won't happen
Josh
again.
Emond. And that might be you?
Yes.
Hi Josh, welcome. I'm Josh also.
So Josh,
David,
Nice to meet
Laura,
you, Josh. How are you?
Good.
Good.
Karen, Alyssa,
he already knows us,
sorry.
but,
Yeah. So go ahead.
so Josh expressed interest in the ACO,
Mhm.
and he and I talked, and, a couple times, and exchanged emails,
Mhm.
and gave him some more supporting documentation. As you know, our budget is really low for
Okay.
animal control. It's 1,800.
Yeah,
There,
annually.
there is no training budget, there's like no expense budget, so, we know at one point we're gonna have to boost that budget. So Josh is understanding of that, and he's gonna need some training.
Mhm.
We spoke to Robert Lakin, he's the deputy lieutenant,
Yeah,
and he said for an animal control officer, the basics are good, but if we want to have a, officer that's trained properly, then we are going to have to invest in training.
right,
And I recommend that we do that
yeah,
for his safety and the public's safety.
yeah. And were you able to get in touch with Passive by any chance or not?
With who?
Passive? With
No,
insurance?
I
You
did
were-
not,
okay.
no, but I will.
So, the only question about training, you're willing to get some training, is that correct? Okay, within reason. My only concern is, at this stage, is if you don't have any training and you were to get injured while doing the animal control officer role, would our insurance cover that? So I think we can go ahead and appoint if that's what we decide to do.
Yeah.
But it would be contingent on approval from our insurance company, just to make sure that we're covered.
I do have a reasonable amount of common sense too.
That's good. That's a good place to start. And what interests you about the animal control officer position? I know you're a neighbor of where some of the recent incidents have occurred, but want to elaborate a little bit?
I mean, I'm just an outdoors guy. I mean, I grew up with the dog officer up the road, and it always fascinated me. And when I saw the position was open and nobody had filled it, and I reached out to Karen, and she told me that we really haven't had one and have had a hard time keeping one.
Yeah.
Seems like a good idea. Try it out.
Okay. And you like animals?
Yes, I have. I have 2 dogs, cat. We've dabbled in livestock. I do appreciate animals.
And reasonably comfortable with them?
Right.
Yeah, I'm just a bit of history, you may know all this, but we've had 3 dog-on-dog bites in the last
Attacks.
year. Yeah, attacks with bites, one of them resulting in the death of a dog. I think actually 2 of them,
Two.
exactly, 2 resulting in the
Yes.
death of the dog being attacked.
Yeah.
One right here on Kimball Hill and the other one down at Putney Landing. And then recently we had a dog that was picked up by a citizen who she was familiar with the dog and returned it to its home. This is Catherine Temple, you may have heard about this,
I did.
Dale's daughter.
Okay.
Returned the dog to, it's a residence up at the top of Putney Mountain Road. And when she let it out of her car and walked towards the house, she knocked on the door and the dog lunged at her and bit her in the face, close to the eye. She was lucky. And then Dale showed up because Catherine had told her told him what she was doing. And the dog then proceeded to bite Dale on the leg a couple times.
Twice, yeah.
Per protocol, then the dog was quarantined for, it was registered and up to date on its shot, so there wasn't particular concern with that, but it was quarantined initially to Vermont, New Hampshire, and then the owner came and picked it up and is required to keep it quarantined at his home for 14 days, I think it was, 10 days maybe.
10. Yeah.
But it's been an ongoing discussion what to do about animal control, and our budget is small. When we have had people in the past, typically they've been people who have had some experience with animal control, but they haven't tended to last, and that's usually a financial question, because somebody coming on for that role is often thinking of it as something that's going to be part of a bigger picture job for them. You know, what our budget allows, that's not realistic, so they often then move on to an animal control officer position somewhere else. We've talked with neighboring towns, we've talked with the sheriff's department, we've been working on this for a long time. So to have somebody who's willing and able, and has sort of seen some of what the results have been of not having a person, I think we would probably, it's your recommendation.
It is
that
my
we appoint.
recommendation that we appoint Josh.
Okay,
It is an on-call,
right,
so it's an on-call basis. He'll go to the, calls, follow up if there's, a dog barking. See, it reduces the time the sheriff has to
I was
spend
gonna
on
say,
this
how do we handle it now
nuisance.
that we don't have
Right.
someone doing that?
The
Do we call
sheriff
Lynn
does.
County?
Yep,
Yep.
yep.
which,
And it's only for domestic animals? It's not for, we would call a game warden of state police if it was a deer or
Right.
raccoon
Yeah,
or whatever.
Just domestic.
Just registered dogs or whatever. That's what.
It's mostly dogs that we're having
Right.
issues with right now.
although we've gotten, in the past, I've personally gotten calls, for example, a year ago, a year and a half ago, I got a call when there was a rabid skunk, that was clearly rabid,
Yep.
that was in somebody's yard. We didn't have an animal control officer that couldn't get in touch with the game warden. I went over, by the time I got there, the skunk was gone, but, there may be calls like that. That would be up to your judgment and training as to whether you feel comfortable doing something like that. In a situation like that, if it's obvious that the animal is rabid, you're just gonna shoot it and then call the proper authorities. But,
It's
it's sort of,
Fish and Game deals with all wild.
but sometimes even in the best case scenario, it's 4 hours before anybody can get there. And Karen tells me you also work full time, so I know there would be limitations on your time as far as that's concerned. But a lot of it, these more recent ones being good examples, is also just follow-up and conversations with the owners of the animals and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
And if there's like a real emergency and it needs,
Wingham County Sheriff's.
yeah, we'd call the sheriff right up.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom Goddard also is the health officer.
Okay.
So if it's a bite to a person,
Got it.
Tom's
Tom would be
involved
included
right
anyway.
off.
Right.
So
Are there any rules about restraining your dogs in the limits of town? Is there any kind of, like, what do we have for,
we,
you know?
we have a
Yeah.
nuisance animal ordinance and it's being revised right now through the Animal Advisory Board.
Mhm.
They've been working on it. It's just about done. It's gonna be rolled out soon, like within a month.
But we can also hand you a copy of
Yes.
the old one and
Yeah.
or a draft of the new one.
And
Actually, a
Josh
draft of
has-
the new one.
The old one, the new one's not ready to go yet,
Yeah,
but, and it needs to go through legal counsel,
Right.
just to make sure
yeah.
we're covered.
Got it.
We're limited somewhat by statute, state
Yes.
law as to how we can act on things. But we have if we have an ordinance in place that's thorough, we can act on that, not disregarding statute, but in addition to statute.
Right.
Okay.
The state dog laws are pretty loose.
Ah,
So, like, for example, a dog-on-dog attack is not even considered,
No.
statutorily, is not
It's a
considered.
civil matter.
It's exactly.
Yeah.
So, our biggest drawback with any of this, and an animal control officer would be great and potentially very helpful in this, but still limited, is enforcement. I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
we can issue tickets, we can issue fines. Who's going to go out when somebody doesn't pay their fine and keep talking to them about it, and how,
And then you gotta go to court, and it's like,
so.
what would his limitations be and what would his responsibilities be? He gets called, there's a dog-on-dog thing happening, there's people around. What does he have, what can he do? What judgment does he get to make sure people are
it
safe?
depends on the
And how are we
situation.
responsible as a town for what he does?
It depends on the situation, and then documentation is very important, and we've learned this as these.
Over and over.
Yeah, because if it ever goes to court, David, that documentation is gonna be useful.
Mhm.
So, and as far as Josh, depending on, I don't know how many calls he's gonna get a year. This is you know, I
Maybe
just
none,
don't
and then
know.
maybe 5 in a week.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. You know, and, I mean, it's the owners. They're the ones that, you know, have to be in control and responsible and accountable.
Right, and if they
So-
were, we wouldn't need this, so obviously there's an issue.
Right.
So,
And the fact that we haven't had one in so long, and because we've had certain situations, that we have to have somebody following through.
mhm.
And this is part of what Josh would be doing. He'll also be working with the Animal Advisory Board, Select Board, myself, Tom,
Mhm.
and the Sheriff's Department. And Wyndham County also,
Mhm.
because if we get strays, they can go to Wyndham County in Brattleboro, the Humane Society. So there's a lot of resources, so I'm hoping things will just calm down a little bit. But there's no signs for leash areas in town, so we're looking at signage.
Which currently includes basically the entire village area
Got it.
has a leash
Sand
law.
Hill.
That zone.
From, exactly,
Right, right.
Yeah.
includes Sand Hill, includes up to the beginning of West Hill, out
Yes.
the west-west road,
Yes.
goes out to the Dummerston line this
Mhm.
way, goes to, I think, Sand Hill this way as
Yes,
well.
yes.
And maybe part of River Road, I can't remember.
Yeah, high-low biddy, all the, you know,
Got it, okay.
Christian Square,
But again, enforcement, you know,
right,
if somebody's walking down the street with a dog not on a leash, who goes out and talks to that person, which could be you, could be her,
Right.
could be anybody.
Right.
yeah, yeah.
But then we see them again the next day, you know, there's not much tooth behind it. So
Right.
sort of what that means, Josh might be able to be helpful in that. We've also, again, we've been leaning on the sheriff's department for a long time to be, you know, this really in some ways should be their purview, but they don't have the financing, they don't have the personnel, et cetera, so.
But it's also good for us as a town
Town,
to
yeah.
be
responsibility
addressing
for
it in some way. So
Yes.
now that there's been an issue, there's at least that.
Right.
Yeah.
So that we can't be seen as negative.
Yeah.
We have to
Not
act.
Right.
On
Right.
each one.
I see what you're saying.
And actually-
Thanks for that.
Another good example of the statutory limitation in this last one, you know, if it's a dog on person attack, we, the select board, could make the decision to dispose of that dog if we
Got it.
felt that was the right thing to do.
Got it.
Statutorily, we can't do that in this state, in this situation, because it happened on the dog owner's property. If that dog
Yeah.
had bitten her on the road,
Right.
it would be our purview.
Right.
Since it happened on his property, not up to us.
Right, it was her choice to go there. Her
Exactly.
choice to pick up the dog.
Exactly.
And that dog
So-
belongs to the owner who owns that land.
And that could be a civil, you know, if the temples chose to, they could sue. You know, but the concern you have in a situation like that is, you know, what if it's a little kid walking by on the road and the dog leaves the property, bites the kid? Then, and that's where the liability question comes in also for us as a town. If we didn't take action on it previously and are unable to enforce, because that same dog that bit them has been out wandering, and we know that even though the owner has been told that the dog cannot be allowed to leave the property, it's complicated. So,
Directly across the street from where that dog is, there's a house with 2 young children that are out pretty
Playing.
Right. As far as me and my full-time job, I'm not doing surgery. And if there's an emergency, I can get out.
okay.
With the skunk situation, the hypothetical, I wouldn't walk away. I'd very easily get Kelly Price on the phone and say,
Yeah,
hey,
exactly.
can I go ahead and shoot the skunk? He's obviously
Right.
got some problems.
Right.
It's a safety issue, and just look for his reinforcement on it.
Yeah.
And just go with his decision.
So you say surgery, I'm curious about your background, because I know nothing about you.
No, I'm not doing surgery. If I
Okay,
need
what's
to
your
get out of
background? What
work,
are you bringing, where,
I work at GS Precision now. I sold cars for a lot of years,
okay.
which I believe will help me deal with the public
Uh-huh.
and maybe diffusing attitudes or,
Yeah.
you
That was
know,
one of my
nobody
questions.
wants to be told that they're in the wrong,
Yeah.
that they have to do something about their pet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Do you
gonna say-
have any training for de-escalation? Have you ever been in situations before where you had to de-escalate folks that were
Angry car buyers?
Yeah.
Yeah, not formally, no.
Yeah. Do you feel like you'd be comfortable learning
Yes.
that and?
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is the kind of thing, typically, just so you know, usually with people who we appoint, we will willingly fund training for them to a reasonable level of whatever they want. For example, something, if you were interested in, and the Vermont League of Cities and Towns leads a lot of stuff, and since we're what's called a member town of that, we get discounts on that, et cetera, but we're always aware of these things going on. You potentially could sort of do as much training as you were interested in doing. I mean, I'm sure there's, Animal Control Officer 101, but if you're interested in Animal Control Officer, 102, 3, 4, and 5, over time, we're probably happy to fund that to you. Usually in that kind of situation, it's a balance for us of saying, okay, well, he's got 6 months or a year in, and he's done the basic training, and he doesn't look like he's going anywhere. We're happy to invest more, so it's just kind of a balance of how much you're interested in learning, how much you feel you need to know, versus what you have to know in order for us to be covered by insurance, et cetera. So that is an ongoing discussion typically in situations like this. So that's where we're at. But it's helpful, we would not expect you to have to leave your place of employment
Right.
to attend something like this, but if you were to get a phone call and you were able to, and that was reasonable, that would be great. But
It wouldn't be a problem on my end.
it would be, and that, again, that would also be sort of I don't remember whether we have a specific hourly wage laid out for this or not, but
We should look at that, because
We
is
should.
it like per call or hourly?
I know we have done it hourly at times in the past. Excuse me, I don't think it's necessarily written down somewhere.
Right.
But I know with at least 2 of our previous people that they were hourly, on a per diem basis. So, and $1,800 is a teeny little budget, but like David said, you might not get a phone call for 8 months.
Wow.
But then, the flip side of that is what happened at Santa's Land a few years
Right.
ago, which took
Yeah.
hundreds of people's, took
Resources.
hundreds of hours for
Resources,
many
yeah.
people,
Yeah.
including, we didn't have an animal control officer then either. But then it was Melissa Martin, it was our sheriff,
Yeah.
our deputy, who was deeply involved in that. But
Westminster has a budget of $4,500.
yeah, I mean, I don't think that's unrealistic going forward. It also depends on the training. I mean, I think,
Right.
my feeling would be we see how this budget holds up, that there should be a discussion about an hourly wage,
I expect that it may go over, by,
especially if we include training. I mean,
right, and supplies. So
Right.
he is gonna need like a catch pole right
Yeah.
off. He's
Yeah.
gonna need certain supplies.
Yeah,
Because we don't have any of that here.
yes.
So I would like to just be able to, invest in,
And are we
Those-
paying mileage for?
We
this
always-
vehicle?
it's always mileage, it's 58 cents per mile. So depending on, we do that for all employees, whether training, meetings.
Yeah. And you're comfortable using, you have an appropriate vehicle that you're comfortable using?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that certain people have had an issue with in the past is, I don't know what kind of vehicle you have, but, this dog being a good example that was recently involved, you probably don't want to put it in your,
Car.
VW.
You're right.
If you have a pickup truck,
That dog has been in my pickup truck.
there you go.
I brought it home before.
Might be doing that again. Maybe with some training though.
So, yeah, I mean, I would say as far as equipment is concerned, we probably find out for you about Animal Control 101. You do it, you say, these are the things I'm likely to need. I mean, basically some Kevlar gloves, like she said, a pole, a catch
There's a-
pole, and maybe
Yeah.
some
There's
mace.
a
And
basic ACO starter kit.
That's probably.
It's got
what it-
5 or
exactly.
6 small things in it. It's 150, $200.
Yeah,
It's catch pole, bite-proof gloves.
Yeah.
Mace, I believe.
yeah,
It's very small but essential things.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think we could start. with
Yeah.
that.
I mean,
And knowing very little about how you would be doing your job, would you put a kennel, like do you have a so you said you have a pickup, would you put a kennel in the back of the pickup if you had to transport, or?
It's got a cap on it,
Okay,
yeah.
so that,
pretty much winter and spring,
Mhm.
and I'd probably just put a cage of some sort in the back of it
I might have
when the
one
cap's
for you.
not on.
Yeah.
So we also talked about, you know, if, this is long-term,
Yeah,
looking at maybe, getting a kennel, you know, at
a
his
facility
house.
somewhere,
Mhm.
yeah,
At his house, and if it's a registered Putney dog,
yeah,
he can contact
Hold
the
it.
owner.
yeah,
Owner comes up, you know, we could even charge a fee
yeah,
if we wanted to. But, and then we look at maybe, you know, because we have a contract with Wyndham
Right.
Humane Society for
Yeah.
$600 a year.
yeah.
So we may be able to eliminate that.
It'll save the residents some money too, right? Won't they have to pay to get their dog back?
Yes, yep.
What about in the case of injury, like an injured animal, he wouldn't want to bring an injured animal home with him?
No, we probably have to.
Vermont, New Hampshire,
Yeah, Vermont, New Hampshire veterinary
Right
clinic.
up on Route 5, right?
Yeah,
down on Route 5,
yeah,
yes.
down. But,
And otherwise, in the middle of the night, it's Deerfield, Mass, but I, you know.
We wouldn't
hopefully we're not-
expect
Hopefully,
that.
we're not sending anybody down there.
Hopefully
so-
you're contacting the owner. and-
the owner can make
Exactly.
that
That's
decision,
their
right?
Vermont, New
Yeah.
Hampshire is on call.
Right.
They do 24-hour on call, I'm pretty sure.
I don't think so anymore. They
I think
might.
It's
Yeah.
West Lebanon and where you mentioned
Yeah,
the Mass, and that's it.
yeah.
Yeah.
If I had
Anyway.
an injured dog in my possession and couldn't get a hold of the owner, Deerfield's not out of the question.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, it all, you know, I mean, the problem with that concept, thank you, I appreciate that. The only problem, you know, you walk through the door down there and it costs, you know, it's amazing what it costs. And so we would have to think about incursion of expenses that we might not be able to recoup because, again, enforcement is challenging for us.
And I would be worried about the owner saying, well, you should have contacted me
Exactly.
first.
Well, we would
And I'm
try,
not
certainly,
paying for
you know,
this.
certainly that would be the first
Exactly,
step.
right.
That's, exactly.
All of a
Yeah,
sudden, there's
same
a
thing.
$1,000 bill
Yes.
for a dog that they would have said, no.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
He's 10.
Yeah, put
Yeah.
them out,
Put him
yeah.
out, right,
Yeah.
exactly. That's-
So I think we can tweak this,
Yeah.
I mean,
No, and that's where that common sense side you're talking
Right.
about. You know, I mean, there are certain situations where, you know, it's gonna be a judgment call. But I think, you know, again, usually it's pretty quiet, but it does crop up and several things happen at once sometimes too, so. Learning curve for all of us, I would say. But- All right, so, if there was a motion to appoint Josh Emond, not Josh Edmund, to this position, I would entertain it.
I move to appoint Josh Emond to the Animal Control Officer position.
Seconded?
I second it.
Moved and seconded to appoint Josh Emond as Animal Control Officer. If there is no further discussion, then all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Josh, I'll be in touch.
Okay.
We'll do some paperwork, get you into payroll, okay? All right.
And, yeah,
And I think-
we should look at, we'll look at what our,
But as an employee, I think he'd be covered, but I will double check.
that's,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that, and, but also as far as an hourly is concerned,
Right,
we
right.
should just know what that is, and you should
Yes.
know what that is.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
I'll figure that out,
And that's what it is, so,
whether it's on call or hourly.
right. Yeah,
Okay.
no, I mean, I certainly don't have a problem with it being a per diem, but if it's, you know, I guess my feeling would be, if it's a minimum, you know, you're gonna get X amount
Right,
just for showing up,
yep,
but then it should probably be, you know, if you end up spending 6, 8 hours doing something, which, you know, hopefully is not often the case, but could happen.
yeah, I think
should
hourly
get-
would probably be better because of training and all
Well,
that too.
there should probably be a starting
Yeah,
one and then an
yeah.
hourly, something
Yeah.
along those
We'll
lines.
figure
So we'll
it
look
out.
at that, look at
We'll
what
hit
that
the
looks like.
ground running and tweak
Yeah.
if necessary.
Thank you very much.
Sounds good,
Thank you.
thanks.
Have a good night.
All right,
Think about a base pay for annual if he doesn't meet a certain amount of hours, just because he's investing himself in it?
I think that would be fine to think, an annual stipend
Yeah.
Right,
that then, you know, whether that works as a retainer, which you work off, or how I don't know how we do that. We could look into that. But-
Well, it seems pretty clear he's not doing this as a career. He
Right.
works
No,
on it,
exactly.
and
Right.
he's coming here because he wants to do this,
Yeah.
not because he expects to get rich doing
Right.
this. But, so, I
Good
mean, he's
point.
accepted that
Good
walking through
point.
the door.
yes,
Right.
yep,
The flip side is, you know, if 22 things happen in the next 3 months, we don't want him to walk away saying, wait a minute, I needed to be getting, you know.
Well, we could initiate a conversation.
Exactly, something along those lines, because that, again, that's sort of what has often happened in the past, is that, you know, it hasn't been, somebody hasn't limited, but they were, you know, at least in one instance, they were looking for a career that we couldn't offer them, but there have also been people who have done it and then said, holy smokes, I had no idea what was involved,
right.
but that's not typical, you know, I mean, so he seems like he's well-suited for a role
Right.
like this.
Yeah.
So.
Good.
All right, so second is the municipal policies and codes form, which this is mostly boilerplate. You know, essentially, my interpretation of this
Go ahead, yeah.
is that this is something that the VCDP requires for us to qualify as a municipality that works with them.
Right, to administer the grants. And this is actually revised as of 2018.
Right.
So,
And we had one in place previously, but it
2015.
wasn't the revised one.
Right.
Exactly.
But
So-
I know nothing.
Okay,
Who are they?
so
What
the
do they do?
VCDP
Why do we want to offer it with them, and why do we need to adopt this so that we can?
The VCDP grants money, federal money. Our latest grant from them was for the Putney Landing, the affordable housing behind Curtis's.
Okay.
To the tune of $460,000, something
yeah,
like
yes,
that.
yeah,
Essentially, what happens is that in a situation like this, they have supported us previously on both the general store and on the next stage, as well as I'm sure other things in town. Probably, perhaps sidewalks, perhaps they're not school safety, so probably not school safety. But there are several organizations like them in the state of Vermont. VCDP being one of them, VHCB, which is the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board.
community development.
There's at least 2 others, which we can apply to grants for, and/or in this situation, Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust, which is the affordable housing, the local affordable housing organization based in Brattleboro, but that does Wyndham and Windsor counties, applies to VCDP for grant money for a specific thing, and it's all based on percentages of various different, you know, it's a complex formula when it's federal money. So they apply for that money. We, as the municipality, act as what's called a pass-through. So that money has to, in order for them to get that money, it has to be associated with a municipality. So we basically accept that money, the town accepts the money, and we then hand it back out to them. There's some administrative money in it for the town for any work that Karen, Melissa,
For
whoever
managing.
has to do. You know, there will be, in a $460,000 grant, there will be $12,000 for administrative expenses. So,
Okay.
so the town itself will get, and that's just an example, I don't know whether that's the right, but
I get the
something
idea.
along
I
those
get the idea.
lines. They'll get, you know, we'll get a small amount of money that basically just covers the costs of doing the paperwork that has to be done, making sure that things are filed in a timely fashion, and so on and so forth. Most of which we don't have to do much of, and most of which Wyndham Windsor would come to Karen and say, these are the forms that need, this being a good example. So, this is a
If we don't
form.
adopt this, we don't get passed.
We don't get the
They don't
money.
get the money.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yes,
So-
it has to be on file.
and we have to have accepted this in order for them to consider giving us money. In this case, I don't know whether that's, well, we haven't received the check from this yet.
No, because we're still trying to tie up some loose ends.
Right.
It's
One of
getting
which
closer.
might be this.
That
Right.
is, yes.
You know, the thing with all, not all, but the vast majority of grant monies, both from the state and from the federal, is that they come with a whole bunch of hoops that have to be jumped through.
Yes.
And so it's really a matter of crossing Ts and dotting Is and saying, you know, okay, if we want this money, these are the things we need to do. This is good practice anyway. I mean, you know, there's no reason we wouldn't want to have a good municipal policy about being fair in our employment.
And
so
in
on
no way
so
does that
forth.
jeopardize us, it only makes us stronger.
Exactly.
Why wouldn't we do this?
Exactly.
I get it.
And there's no cost to us for this.
Exactly.
So,
Got it.
and they provide it for us. They've done all the homework. They know what has to be done in order for it to satisfy. I think it's HUD money that goes for VCDP. I'm pretty sure. Housing and Urban Development
Okay.
at the federal level.
Got it.
And then the state becomes a pass-through, so the state gets that money from the feds, then the state takes that money and passes it out to local municipalities, and they all act as pass-throughs. It's just a way of distributing federal money.
And controlling
in an
and
equitable
distributing
way.
it, so it doesn't land
Exactly.
in some developer's
Right.
pocket and
Exactly.
Yep.
they
And-
skim whatever percentage off the top they want, exactly.
And in
It
fact,
makes perfect sense.
yeah,
I don't
no,
understand, I am so
green at this.
green at
That's
this,
okay,
but
don't worry.
I will keep asking, if you don't mind, keep my answer.
No, and it takes a while. There's a lot of this kind of stuff that goes on.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a year in and I still have as many questions.
There you go, well, I feel better, thank you.
I have, so speaking of questions, number 7, promote inclusion and diversity in all levels of the workforce. What is the plan to do that?
Where are you?
Where were we?
Page 2, well, the backside of page 1.
I think it's a good question. We don't have a specific proactive plan. I think that my answer to that would be that we are definitely, I'm actually surprised it says promote.
Yeah, because, and it's kind of contradictory to some of the other qualifications in here that you like, so you can't consider race, color, religion, ancestry, any of that, but you
yet-
have to promote
Right,
inclusion and diversity,
right.
which I fully support. It's just, how are we gonna go about doing that? I know Brattleboro has an excellent, Peter Elwell put together an excellent plan for doing that, and maybe that's something we could visit. I actually,
You and I need to talk anyway
Yeah.
about this whole
Yeah.
diversity.
And I think, it's tricky in a situation like
Yes.
ours because the vast majority of the time, well, Brattleboro's somewhere in between, but it's not like we're going out to a big pool, you know,
Right.
and saying, you know, recruiting, I mean, you know, we can only be as intentional as we can be about it.
yeah.
I
and
think that
makes
my
sense.
interpretation of that is that we would intend to and clearly would be an equal opportunity employer.
Correct.
And would not, you know, for example,
Yeah.
use any of the criteria for trying to eliminate somebody from the process. How proactive we can be, I think that's an ongoing discussion that we should be having. But it's-
How held accountable to what standards of supporting this that we're going to, you know, adopt? I mean, is there like, you know, is there any way we could be penalized for not promoting? Like, what is the definition of promoting inclusion? I mean, it seems like it, I
yeah.
mean, this is really great.
It's
I mean,
a good question.
I mean,
Most of this kind of stuff, statutory and otherwise, is vague enough so that it's left open to interpretation purposefully, so that we can decide what that means for us.
and
I
how
mean,
important
if
is that?
we're saying,
we
you
have the
know,
money to do that.
Exactly.
And it's like,
Yeah.
there are so many people that really need to be addressed with this in our pool, you know?
and the answer is no.
No,
You know,
exactly, right.
but the flip side of that would be if somebody came who was of a different ethnic origin than, you know, your average white person in southern Vermont, and we didn't either accept an application for them or clearly did not hire them based on that, then we could definitely be held to those.
Yeah, but that's not
but-
promoting inclusion.
That's
Exactly,
why
exactly.
promoting
Right.
inclusion,
That's a very different, so
Yeah.
that's why I asked the
Definitely.
question.
Yeah, so our liability for doing that, I think, would be mostly standard good practice.
Got it.
Right.
That we would advertise in the appropriate places, we would have open, if somebody applies for the position, we would, interview them unless they clearly weren't qualified, so on and so forth.
Right.
And that's what we could do at our level,
Yeah.
Would we want to do a whole lot more? Yes, ideally, and
Right.
realistically, maybe perhaps. It's hard to do when we only hire somebody once every,
Most of these are
Several
already in
years,
our
We just
personnel
hired
policy.
Right.
Exactly.
And it seems like it's really common sense stuff. You're not only gonna be discriminated against something if you can't do the job.
No, I
I mean, there it is.
agree.
Unless your abilities to not do the job exclude you from it. And the kind of people in this town, and especially the kind of people in this room, this is a no-brainer.
exactly.
So it's,
Yeah.
I mean.
So it's mostly a non-issue.
Right.
But is there potential liability on any of this kind of stuff? There's potential liability. You
Always,
just have to be careful with that. But for the most part, well, and you have, by agreeing to have become a select board member, you have automatically assigned to you what's called an indemnification clause. You cannot personally be held liable for these things unless you are negligent on a personal level. So, if we made a mistake and the town got sued for not being an equal opportunity employer, you can't personally be sued for that unless you went out of your way to create that situation.
Unless I
on a
stepped in and
person-
said, no,
No,
you-
we're
you-
not hiring
Yeah,
him
yeah.
because of this, that, or
Right.
the other.
Right.
So, but you're covered by
it.
insurance,
Okay.
by
Thank
legal,
you.
so on and so forth, just by having accepted your role as an elected official.
Got
So, so don't do anything stupid.
I've spent my life doing things stupid because I need to learn stuff.
So, sure. I move that we adopt, thank you, the municipal policies and codes from the Vermont Community Development Program.
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the municipal policies and codes form consistent with provisions of the VCDP and federal law. If there's no further discussion, then all in favor?
Aye.
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 And we do, typically, just so we're not waiting for somebody to move something and second something, there tends to be a pattern to it where, you can certainly move something if you want to, and Laura can second it. I can move something and somebody else can second it. That can work anyway, but for sort of just getting through the process without having to say, okay, who's gonna move this and who's gonna move that, I'm gonna tend to look to the vice chair to move it
Good,
and the clerk
perfect,
to
excellent.
second it, and,
Got
if it doesn't work that way, that's fine. If it does, great. And if you're ever opposed to something for any reason, you can either second it and then point that out in discussion, or you can just say, I'm really not behind this, so I'm
Got
not
it.
gonna second it. Legally, by Robert's rules, which are the rules that govern this, technically, we're supposed to have both a motion and a second on the table before we open it for wider discussion. That's pretty gray. It doesn't really matter that much, but
Okay.
sometimes, if it's a particularly touchy thing, you might hear me asking for a motion when it seems early, but that's because legally we're supposed to do that before it's up for discussion, so. This will all be obvious in 12, 13, 14 years.
I knew that's how long you signed up for, right?
I don't know. I've got nothing to say. So- Grew up with two older brothers. The best thing to do is keep your mouth shut. Eyes open, take your hands up.
Eyes open, but don't look them in the face. And we have these guys here to keep us honest all the time anyway, so. Which actually, sometimes it's nice because then we don't have to, you don't have to second guess it. If we, notes, minutes are great because they're a precise, accurate record as best as we can do. Film, if you say something that's gonna come back to bite us and you're on film, we're not gonna second guess that. So, it's important to, I try and make it as light as possible because otherwise we're bogged down and bored out of our minds.
Right.
But at the same time, we all want to and need to adhere to norms and common
Got it.
sense, et cetera.
I'll do my best.
I'm not worried about that.
Mrs. Grout will be proud of me.
There
She's
you
great
go.
Exactly. I started to get the motions in the second thing after the third time. 5 or 6 more times I'll have it.
It'll
Me
get-
too. Still forget.
And it's mostly just about speed. It's just like if you aren't moving through it, then we're just sitting here. So,
And I thank you for teaching me because I realize this is going to take a lot longer because I know nothing.
it takes
And
a while.
I'm really grateful.
It takes a while.
because I have no idea what I'm doing.
Okay, property tax status report, town manager's report. Is that what you want to start with?
Well, I wanted to give you an update on delinquent taxes.
Yeah,
So we're,
you have a sheet in your packet and it was emailed to you.
That I taken care of. I only got into this.
honestly, I don't think it's that bad.
We're at 164 currently,
Found 258,000, 51
but 164 for 2018.
Correct. And then 2017 is a little high too, but, so 17 and 18 actually is the bulk of that 258. As you know, tax sale proceedings after 2 years being delinquent,
I don't know anything. These are the questions
Yeah.
that are screaming in my head.
So-
yeah.
we're gonna be looking at tax sale proceedings soon. So if you're 2 years in arrears with property taxes without a tax agreement that will catch you up,
Without a plan.
without a plan,
Right.
it's gonna go to tax sale. So right now, I can't give you a number of how many properties, but there will be a tax sale this year.
And there typically
Really?
is every year, or there's at least the approach to a tax sale.
Correct.
Last year, for example, everybody who was 2 years in arrears got caught up before, we didn't have a sale last
No,
year,
we
I don't
didn't,
think.
because it went into the fall. What should happen, David, is you try to capture all your delinquent taxes in the fiscal year that you're in
Got it.
because of the audit and because it throws your
And that's
balances
April
off.
1st. April 1st, that's the fiscal year, or
April.
No.
the actual year?
Yeah.
No,
So-
fiscal year is July 1 to July 1.
July
July
1.
1 to June 30.
And
Okay.
then the tax year is April 1st through March 30th or 31st, okay? So we are gonna be doing a tax sale this year.
We already sent out the letters.
Typically, the tax sale is in the summer,
Yes.
usually
Yeah.
somewhere between June.
I'm
The
thinking
middle
May
of
or
June,
June. So what'll happen is the attorney will get notified of the properties that are gonna go to tax sale. They have to come in and do title research on all of them. They have to legally notify the property owner. So what happens is some of those people don't sign the certified mail. So they can't go to tax sale because legally they haven't
You
been
can't
noticed.
say they've been
Right.
notified, even if they
Right.
have.
Right.
No way of doing that.
Right,
There's no other way to do that.
right.
In
Other
a
than
personal
a sheriff,
subpoena,
but-
exactly.
Yeah,
Well, constable, that has typically been
deputy sheriff can
can do it
serve
also.
too.
Yes, yeah.
And I suppose the expense of that is something we don't want to incur unless,
Well, it's on the property owner, all those expenses
I
go
see, would
against
come out of
that
the sale.
property.
Got it.
Yep,
But the tricky thing is many of our, not many, but some of our delinquent people live in New Jersey or South Carolina or, wherever
second
they
home.
might be.
Yeah, it's a second.
Or a piece of property that they inherited or, any number of different
Yeah.
situations.
Yeah.
So it's
And
very
some
difficult.
of these oldest ones, in fact, are ones that, for all practical purposes, we're never gonna recover this money. And we have to figure out how to offset that. I'm guessing some of these are duplicate year to year.
Correct. So we're
with-
gonna pull those out
Right,
and then,
Like
Because-
2011, that's just one property.
right.
yeah,
And then, but that same property is in 2012,
Right.
13, 14, right up
Right.
through.
right.
That's an instance where we're never gonna recoup that money because that person is not gonna, I can't even remember.
There's no way to actually legally notify them, so you can't.
It can be a lien, so they can't, we have a lien on it.
Okay.
Just by the fact that they owe taxes
Right.
automatically sets up a
Okay.
lien. So if they were to sell it, we would be entitled to recoup our taxes for, that's the first.
But they could
we're
sit
the
on
number
it
one
indefinitely if we can't notify them so that we can legally make the sale happen. That debt is something we can't get.
lien. We just carry
Right.
it, exactly.
We carry it, yeah.
As long as we have to. You know, in a situation like this is not particular, and in many of them, they're not particularly intentional on people's parts. Some of them are, some of them aren't. But often though, it's a settlement of an estate, you know, dad's property was sold and the kid inherited this parcel and they've never even been here and they don't care and they don't want anything to do with it and so on and so forth. That's not the current situation, but we've been across that before.
Right.
You know, where you start to run into trouble with that is when there are liabilities to the town as a result of that. You know, a structure that's a danger to the public,
Right.
for
Kids
example.
are hanging out there.
Exactly, things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And then at a certain point, we can, by eminent domain, go in, we've had to do this before, go and take down a structure.
Right.
You know, sometimes we have to do that when the owner is negligent, but it doesn't happen that often.
It looks like a pattern. You know, there's a lot of money owed from 17, but I'm guessing a high percentage of that's going to be recovered. It's just people who are late and
Yeah.
are having
Yeah.
financial problems.
Yeah, hardship.
But they
or-
totally intend to
Right.
and will make
Yeah.
a plan.
And
but-
we're open to, you know, a tax payment plan,
Right.
and we encourage people to do that. But we have to look at each situation.
Yeah.
And even with a tax payment plan, if they're not actively paying like they agreed to, and they're 2 years in arrears,
Yeah.
it's gonna go to tax sale.
I get it.
And the reality is, much as with some people, we don't want to go to tax sale.
Of course.
With some people, it's the only way to get them to actually pay their taxes.
Jesus
So, and there are situations, they have a year to reclaim the property. If it sells
Yes.
at tax sale, they have a year to reclaim the property, but they're paying, if you come in here and buy a property, if there's a parcel that's up for sale and you come in and purchase it, you earn off that money for a year, because basically you're putting out money to buy a parcel for $10,000.
Yeah.
So
that
you put
they
your
come back and buy the
$10,000,
property.
you're paid 1% per month for the term until you get paid back. So it's a 12% return, which is good.
Right.
And there are people who do just that. Yeah, there are people who do that. The taxpayer gets hit with that, because
Yeah.
as we were talking about, whoever's paying it is, well, that was the dog issue, but same concept. You know, so if somebody can't afford to pay their taxes, it goes to tax sale, they don't get evicted or lose their property for a year, but at the end of that year, they owe an additional 12%. In addition to the penalties, et
To
cetera, that they
offset,
pay today.
yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
I get it.
So it's an
Yes.
expensive proposition, but sometimes that's the way it happens. And in fact, we've talked about shortening that 2-year limit to a 1 year, because some towns feel it's actually a better way to do it, because even though it seems less fair, they end up owing a whole lot less money in the long run.
Of course, exactly.
Because every year you go out, if you owe 100,000, or, you know, whatever it is, $10,000, and you go out 2 years on that, your $10,000 is suddenly, you know, 12,500. It adds up really quickly. So we've talked about that. We've never done it.
Well, I
but-
just want to point out too, because some people, we don't do them justice, because they're on limited budgets. And if they're like 2-3 years behind, and they're only paying $50 a month,
They can't
they're
possibly get
never
caught
gonna
up.
catch up.
Right,
Exactly.
right.
Never. So.
Well,
we're not-
this opens up so many other bigger questions for society that we can't deal with as a municipality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, there's, part of me feels like we need a property tax bouncer, and the other part feels like we need an organization set up for people who can't afford to own property
Right.
Yeah.
and they have a place to live.
Yeah.
So how do
No.
we do that?
And-
You know, and everything in between those two things.
Right.
Which is surprisingly varied. I mean,
Right.
you know, we've had people before who have come in when their property's going to tax sale, and they literally had no idea what was happening until, you know, a month before, and it's hard to believe that that happens,
No.
but it does.
I understand.
You know, people just get behind on stuff, they get sick, they get whatever. We have a lot of leeway with taxes, abatement, you know, that whole process
Right.
is completely different, and you'll find out more about that. We have a lot of leeway
So
to,
overwhelmed.
That's Jonathan, town clerk does the
Oh,
abatements.
JJ,
But we
I
are
wrong,
calling
right?
on
So-
it.
but we sit on that
Yeah.
board as well. You signed up for that.
Here I am.
Oh, I forgot.
I showed up.
You
I
also do
am
liquor
actually here,
licenses.
okay? I showed up. You will find that. As any of my coaches, I was the first guy in the field for practice every time, so I will be here.
I heard that.
I wasn't the first guy in here today.
I was outside. No, I'm kidding, I'm kidding.
I'm usually the last guy, so I can give you a hard time with it. But, you know, it comes in so many different shapes and forms, it's really surprising. And, you know, we try and be as generous and as flexible as we can. We also we're running a business. I mean, you know, we can only go so
We're
far.
not in the business to own real estate.
I understand that.
Yeah.
How much of a problem is this to us fiscally, to have this much owed to us?
This is a lot less than when I started here.
Yeah.
So,
So
but
this
does it
is
mean,
like in half.
does it mean we're not gonna pay our bills?
Yeah, but that wasn't end of year. So this is the highest I've ever seen it for end of year.
Really?
Yep, 230 is the
wasn't
highest I
last
can
year?
remember.
I thought it was higher
I might
last
be
year.
wrong,
So-
but,
No, when I came in over a year ago, it was like 550,000.
well, but that was not end of year. That wasn't at the close, that wasn't after an audited year.
Meaning we had collected much of that 550.
Well,
before
if you
the
look
end
at,
of the year.
if you look at these
Yeah,
numbers
yeah.
in December, when the February payments haven't come in,
Yeah.
it skews the whole thing.
Of course.
So,
I
I
see,
could be
'cause that
wrong, but I
February
don't think I
payment
am. The last I remember, 230
I
total.
can verify that, so.
I know,
After
so
the-
find out. You're going to, I know
Yes,
you're
too,
going to.
because I'm not doing it as higher, but that's kind of how I consoled myself
Yes.
when I was looking at these earlier,
Right,
like, oh,
right.
well, it's not.
So my question's still the same, is having this much money out a problem to us?
No,
Okay,
Hi.
all right.
When is the town notary in?
he's in there
He
now.
should be there now.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm
That's
sorry.
That's
Okay.
okay, you
Okay,
can
you
go
can
right
go
through
in
the store
there.
there,
Go ahead.
and then take a
Jonathan's-
right, he'll be
Yes,
there.
Sorry, this is
No.
new for me, I'm sorry.
No,
That's
no,
okay.
no problem at all. This is a public meeting, you're welcome to stay if you want, but you don't
My
have to.
wife and twins.
Run while you
You
can.
feel about us having an animal control officer.
All right.
Yeah, no, operationally, like day-to-day operation, this is something we anticipate, we know we're gonna have it, so on and so forth.
All right.
The reality is, we need to and should have everything prior to 2 years. You know, this should only be a 2-year running tab.
Well, that's the jump I see. Like
Yeah.
the C2 jump, I see it go from,
Right.
it goes
Exactly.
from 400 to 10,000.
And
It's
that's-
like- And then it goes from
These should not even be.
16 to 60.
And some of them, right, and some of them can't get, some of them we can't, for a variety of reasons, can't get off of here until we deal with them in specific ways.
Yeah.
Which is why they're still on here
And
There-
we will do that this year.
this year. There are other ones that will clean themselves up as a result of the independent tax sale. A lot of people come in and say, I'm sorry, I can do it, excuse me, I haven't been able to.
Yeah,
Let's come up with a plan, get it done, and erase it.
yeah. And we're
But-
in good
but-
shape right now, David.
Okay.
Overall.
Financially, we are, yes, yeah.
We also have tremendous, not that we would ever try and do it to offset something like this, but it's a good balancing act, having a financial director who, makes sure that we have the cash flow we need all
Right.
the time, because our tax payments only come in 3 times a year.
Yeah.
Our big expenditures, go out on a reasonably planned basis, so we usually know when our money is going out. We also have incredible leeway to borrow if we have to.
Got it.
And we get good financing rates.
So you're saying you see this as the highest it's ever been, but you don't see a trend that it's getting worse, that things seem, if we look at the last
No,
10 years,
I think,
the amount, the percentage we're not collecting is staying about the same. Is that true? If we
it-
took this back
it
and
comes
saw
and
this
goes.
pattern 10 years
The
ago,
worst
we'd see the
I
same pattern.
remember was just after 2008.
Got it. Okay.
You know, it
Well,
was like
that's-
2009,
Yeah, during the
2010.
recession, right.
Exactly, it spiked way up.
Yeah.
But the total, this would be my only concern, is that total is so much different than last year's. Because those should be relatively close because of, through the tax sale process, we should have cleaned it up.
Right.
I'm not pointing fingers about that, I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
No,
you know,
I agree with you.
You know, there's $40,000 here
Yeah.
in those top 5 lines that just shouldn't be there.
Right.
You know,
That's what I was asking about the patterns.
It's not
The patterns
easy to
staying
do,
the same,
but-
is there a problem?
I
no,
don't-
this
I
is
have-
typical,
yeah.
Okay.
not
Right.
surprising.
Right.
But, and Karen's gonna,
And I'll know
Figure it out.
another year too, yeah. So, but honestly, it is looking pretty good, thanks.
what else you wanna talk about? Huh? Come on, bring it on.
This time.
Moving
I stirred the pot.
You know,
The new
these,
guy on the block.
well, it's also, you know, it's amazing year after year, even doing this as long as I have. And you know, Scott and I used to talk about this a lot, you know, it's like stuff comes up all the time that you're like, I don't know, we never saw this before, you know, I mean, it just happens all the time. There's always something that
Yeah.
nobody knows why it happened that way or what happened or whatever, so.
Well, this is really me just trying to learn. So the question, I'm gonna ask every question that pops in my head, because you're gonna say something I don't know yet.
Yeah,
And so if I don't, I'm not going to. So I'm
Yeah.
not one to be quiet, really.
don't worry, we'll
when I
be
don't
patient
understand.
with you.
What's that?
We're all learning too.
Okay.
I am, Laura is,
Yeah, you actually, I mean, that's important to remember.
Yes.
Karen's been here a year and a half.
Yeah.
Melissa's been here a
6
half a
months.
year.
Yes.
Exactly. Laura's been here a year,
yeah. So we're-
13 years.
right. We're learning from Josh.
Yeah, and I make a lot of it up, so.
Don't say
But he
he's
does
joking
it, he
about
does
that.
it, he does it so believably.
I remember all that.
As long as he's willing to be the guy that's responsible for what he's made up, I will stand behind him.
That's where Donald Trump and I veer apart.
Well, yeah, you and him and a lot of people. Oh, my God.
All
Starting
right,
now.
so, no, we don't get into those discussions in here.
Sidewalks?
Yeah,
Sorry.
sorry.
Moving on. It's supposed to be a short meeting.
It's my fault that it's, I can tell.
No, it's all of ours. Sidewalk pre-construction,
So I just want to update you, we do have a pre-construction meeting for phase 3 sidewalk
which is from Anita's.
to Landmark College.
Oh, where does it go by the pub? I never even looked at the plan. I know
Vinegar
it's-
Lane.
Vinegar
Yeah,
So it's
Alice
Lane.
going down
Mays.
Vinegar
Yes.
Lane.
Yes.
Yep,
Excellent.
yep.
So
And
how-
I have the plans in my office, so if you ever want to see them, just stop in. And I can
Got
talk
it.
you through.
Okay.
All right, you can come to the pre-construction meeting if you want.
Is that here?
It is here at 1 o'clock on Tuesday, the 26th.
Yeah, right, yeah, I really can't do it.
It's okay, but
Yeah.
it's gonna start up really soon.
We have already hired the contractor, who's Zaluzny.
Got it.
We got 3 bids. Zaluzny was both the lowest bid, and, well, they all have to be pre-qual, there's all sorts of qualifications, you know.
This
That-
again,
The contracts for
federal
these
grant,
things
state
make this look like,
Because the money for this, at least partially, is coming from a grant.
Yeah,
and you
2
have to
grants.
satisfy
Yes,
the criteria the grant
Yeah.
company wants to get the,
a lot of paperwork.
wow.
and
Man, I come from the woods.
And, well, and the vast majority, I mean, our match on this is well, the budget, the total budgeted was
The cost,
potentially 560, right?
600,000,
600.
yep.
So our responsibility in that, as the municipality, it's a 10% match overall, is that right?
It's either 10 or 20, I get confused
On
because there's
this
so
one
many
versus
different
the other
ones,
one.
yeah.
So roughly,
It
we
might be
kick in,
10,
if it's
Josh.
10%, we kick in 60,000 bucks.
Yep,
All the rest of the money comes from grant money.
Got it.
And, you know, people often say, well, but that costs us $60,000 to do that. And it's like, well, yeah, but you're getting a $600,000 sidewalk. And if we don't do that, some other town is. So, you know, not.
The money's there.
The money's there, and it's there so that towns spend it. And so if we aren't chasing that money, somebody else is. It's all competitive. So you gotta have, like I said, it's all about dotting and crossing. You know, to get these grants, they have to be well-written grants. Everything has to be on time. All the homework has to be done. Otherwise, you just don't get the money.
Got it.
And so, you know, we do this as much as we can, because we can leverage $60,000 into $600,000. You know,
Right, and better.
yeah, it's $60,000, but
Right.
we're getting a lot for
And
that.
if you keep kids from walking around the inside of
Yeah,
that
thank
corner,
you.
Exactly.
people
That's
driving around
the
at
idea.
60 instead
Yeah.
of 30.
Yeah.
Right.
And in fact, in this situation, Landmark gave us a big chunk of money towards this as well. For all,
$180,000.
towards both phases, from the general store up.
Yeah.
They
from
put
this-
$180,000 into it in order to basically motivate us to do it.
Yeah.
The other thing we often do with grant money is we can do in-kind services. So for example, we could have Brian do all the trucking of material from somebody or somewhere for this, and we can bill that at whatever the billable rate is. That counts towards our $60,000.
Right.
So we can often do that. You know, we did that last year on the project or the one closer to you on Hickory Ridge 2
Got it.
years ago.
Got it.
And Holland Hill.
We provided the dump trucks to move all the material. So, you know, and that offsets that, in that case, that was a $30,000 match, I
Right.
think, that we had.
Oh,
And we were
yeah.
able to,
So
we
instead of
were,
it coming out of the fund, it comes out of
Exactly.
it and it comes back.
Through
to
labor.
our town.
it's all sort of budgeted.
That's
Equipment.
that's genius.
Yes.
It works well when it works.
Again,
Material.
from the woods, man,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
amazing. This is amazing.
Yeah.
There's so
there's
much
a lot
to
to
learn.
it.
So-
Meet Paul.
Oh my god, that's the first dollar ever made.
All right, so pre-construction meeting on the 26th at 1 o'clock.
Yes.
Okay. And that will be Zaluzny, Brian, state guys, local
Pathways.
DOT.
Yeah, Pathways will be here.
Pathways is the supervising engineer.
Yeah.
You know, it's basically all the brains behind the operation. So
Maybe the neighbors.
some neighbors likely, yeah.
Exciting. So
All right.
glad it's happening.
And then, do we have a construction start date?
Not yet.
Okay.
The permit, the state permit,
Yeah.
allows April 15th to start.
No sooner than.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think they can prep, like
Right.
tree
if they
cutting
choose
and
to.
stuff like that, but nothing.
No disruption to the road before
Right.
April 15th.
Right. And I'll find out more on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is, just because on the subject, anything on Route 5 is typically one of our sort of most complicated things because
It's a state.
it's a state, exactly. So anything we want to do out there changes. The other, even more complicated, and the access to Putney Landing was an example of this, is because it's on the ramp to 91, federal, state, and town. So, you know, it just layers it upon
You just
layers.
can't do it the Earl Stockwell way anymore.
No, you really can't. And much of, you know, in
That
fact,
was meant to be a joke and nobody here laughed.
no, but you're very right. And in fact, well,
I don't know.
perfect example, the A&R stuff that just got passed for flooding,
Yeah.
it allows where and where you can't, it's a restriction on where you can and can't build in flood zones. Everything on Hickory Ridge Road that Earl built
Yeah.
would not be there.
Right.
There's no way they would do that. They're all grandfathered and they'll all be fine, but you could never do that now. So, you
No
know,
new
that kind of thing.
construction.
No, right, that's what I'm saying. These are all houses that
Yeah.
Earl Stockwell built that are
Right.
in, really
All
shouldn't be
down
where they
there,
are
yeah.
anyway,
Right.
but now you really couldn't get away with it, so.
Right, and everything costs so much now, you can't do it without grant money, and you have to do the permission to get the grant money, and so the whole thing.
Yeah.
Cycle,
Yeah, you
cycle,
got
cycle, cycle.
I see it right there.
You've got this all figured out, we're good. Okay, so anything else about that pre-construction meeting?
No.
Okay, sounds good. So warrants. So the warrants, David, are the legal documents and accounting of expenditures that we send out. So every time, do you want to describe this, or do you want, I mean, basically,
So bi-weekly,
they're bi-weekly issuance of checks for payroll, but there's also accounts payable, so anything we purchase and need to pay off.
Got it.
We
We
have
buy a
to,
truck, we buy a fire truck, we do pay the guys in the road.
everything.
we
Yeah.
buy paper clips, you know,
Yeah.
anything and everything goes, I mean, that goes under office supplies, but it all
Get
goes
it.
through
And you'll
here.
see this, and there's reports in here that you can look
Got it.
through to see what gets paid.
And so every week, or almost every week, we sign a payroll warrant or two. Not every week, every other week.
Bi-weekly, yeah.
And we almost always sign an accounts payable warrant too, which we are the legal entity that has to approve the expenditure of that money. So if we don't sign these, they can't issue the checks.
Right.
The treasurer reviews it, basically the financial director and the assistant
Yeah,
put this information all together.
They do the work.
Much, exactly. Then Scott Henry, who's the appointed treasurer, reviews it, says, yes, it looks good to me. And then,
and Melissa's
and
the
assistant
assistant
treasurer,
treasurer, so she
more
has a
often than
handle
not.
on it too.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
Then it comes to us, we review it, but, you know, as is true with the vast majority of the stuff that the organization does, we give it a pretty cursory review.
I was gonna say,
because
how could we possibly,
Exactly,
by the time
because
you
we-
go through it, read
and
all
that's
that,
exactly
that
what it
you've
is.
already read, that, yeah, I mean, wait a minute, yeah.
So, you know, what I tend to do, and I told Laura this a year ago, what I tend to do is I look through them. If there's anything that surprises me, I ask about it. If I say, wait a minute, there's a $10,000 payment to Babbitt's Automotive.
I was
Why
gonna
is
just
that?
ask you about
Yeah. You ask about that. If you know, if there's anything that draws your attention, payroll is pretty straightforward. I mean, it's just everybody's getting their paycheck, so.
yeah, but
I understand.
different. So library's bi-weekly, then we have on-call fire department, whether it's firefighter or EMS, they get paid once a month.
Sometimes it's a little higher than others.
Yeah. So you're gonna see these warrants fluctuate,
Okay.
depending on how many people are actually getting paid.
That particular.
And then when the pool is open, it's even higher.
Because we're paying all the lifeguards.
Got it, okay.
And then the accounts payable, the huge ones are when we make our payments to the school, because we are a pass-through also for the school. That state education funding that we've talked about, when we collect our taxes, the education portion of it goes to the state then reissues us checks, and we reissue them to the school.
Good
So,
God.
yeah,
Yeah.
just to make
Within
things
10
straight-
days.
To make it streamlined.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Good
But,
God.
so, you know, we'll have, how much is our warrant? This is a $100,000 warrant, or what do we have for our AP?
Oh, AP, I didn't even know, let me see, 63,000.
63,000. So that's somewhere between 60 and 100 is not unusual for our bi-weekly. We spend a chunk of change every
We
2
do.
weeks.
Yeah,
Holy moly.
But 3 times a year, or at least twice a year, that will be more like $1 million. I mean, the 680, we used to have bigger ones because we didn't pay them on time, and then
Right.
but we've been staggering them, and those payments are $350,000 to BUHS and $600,000 to Putney Central.
yeah, at least $1 million go out to the schools.
Exactly.
$1 million too. Yeah.
Okay, I'm
So-
trying to wrap my head around this. Around the business, it's really simple, it is really small.
Yeah, I get that.
Same story. No, all of this doesn't make sense. All right, so what we do, so,
What's the dates on them? I move that we approve
and to execute
and execute the warrant as presented
upon review.
upon review.
There
Thank
you
you.
go.
So it's been moved and seconded to approve and execute the warrants as presented upon our review.
Get it.
So you second it?
I second it.
So
Thank you.
it's been moved and seconded.
Great.
And if there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Unanimous again.
Yeah.
So
We're
payroll warrant dated March 8th 2019, in the amount of $9,528.97. This includes the library. Now, remember, our last meeting was actually on February 27th, so we will have.
We've got 2 warrants for payroll.
We have 3.
Oh, we have 3. Okay.
Mhm.
And that's because this board hasn't met,
Right.
and you've actually created 2
Yes,
payment cycles, or whatever you wanna call them.
Yeah.
And we have to, each one has to be looked at.
And in fact, we would have had, after, if I hadn't left town, we would have had,
Right.
the day after town meeting, we would have had a regular meeting.
And
Our-
then there would have been 2.
This isn't, exactly.
he
And
threw the whole
this is-
schedule out.
That's why we have to meet again next year.
Yeah,
I'm
And then-
picking up on other business that's happening here. Okay.
There's none of that.
Now, do you want me to show you? that?
Yeah, show me
So
what
this
one.
just has everybody who works here, who got paid this week.
Got it,
And then this is the total amount of the whole thing.
got it.
And it's in
So,
2 lines because these people get checks and these people get electronic deposit.
okay, all right.
And you can review this stuff anytime you
Right.
want.
Okay, got it.
You know, I mean.
As
Understand.
long as you didn't see
for-
Karen got like $10,000.
Exactly.
I see, yeah, no, but it's like a
Those are
reasonable
what you
amount
have
of money, and I see all these people and know them.
Needs to be
Oh.
We need
this
to
warrant.
change it.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
a good point.
I don't know how to do that. I
And we
mean, I'm
did-
sure I can
that
figure it out.
happened.
Laura's name needs to be capitalized too. I've noticed that in the past. She's the uncapitalized one.
Oh, yeah,
What?
just to be consistent. See, you're all title case and.
Oh, I'm like, it's normal. It looks right to me, but
Oh,
I
okay.
get
I was
it,
wondering, I
okay.
didn't see where I keep
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
get.
I've never
Some
noticed
difference
that
in there.
before.
Yeah, so we
When I
have to
did
have, we
I'll
need
do
to
that.
do that, and we're
There you
gonna
go.
do it on accounts payable too.
Yep.
So payroll warrant dated March 15th, 2019, in the amount of $6,868.86. This would be the highway department and office.
And they get paid every 2 weeks?
Every week.
Every week,
week,
yes,
okay.
yeah.
Hence 3
Right.
collections.
Yep.
Got it, okay.
And then payroll warrant, March 22nd, 2019, in the amount of $8,694.71. Again, it's library, highway, and office.
How do the teachers get paid and we pay them?
No,
That's how it-
We issue those big checks to the
Yeah.
school. They will
And they get their check from the
yeah,
state. Okay.
separate entity.
And that's another way of streamlining it, I understand.
yeah, I don't know if I can
Yeah.
handle all of that, David.
Huh?
If we had to pay, yeah, there's no way.
Yeah.
Well, and in fact, you know, until a year ago, most of that was still reviewed by Anita, which
Yes.
she did not need to be doing, but
Yeah.
she insisted on doing.
Yeah.
And so now, actually, all of that stuff goes straight down to the supervisory union, and they reissue checks
Yeah.
for up here. I don't
Okay.
think they do payroll out of here anymore, I don't
No,
think.
the SU does it.
That's what.
Yes, yeah,
Frank
right.
takes care
Yeah,
of it.
no, yeah.
Yeah.
So, accounts payable warrant dated February 28th through March 1st. This is a small one in the amount of $24,966.50. There's
This is-
a loan payment that had to be made on one of our vehicles.
Yeah.
And the deposit on the gravel pit.
Okay.
And because we were on that off cycle, Josh,
Those were issued by the treasurer.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that was right after town meeting, that happened.
Right before.
Right before, yeah. And then accounts payable dated March 8th through March 15th, 2019, in the amount of $63,049.58.
Where's your cheat sheet?
So we have insurance in there, that's one of your bigger
big
ones,
Do you have
right?
some reimbursements or with these taxpayers?
They are overpayments,
Okay.
so they're, payments, credits to them. 'Cause we
Do
don't,
we have mass dollar cleaning here yet?
no,
No, you guys are still doing that?
not really, but it's
No?
$45 a week.
Chad Musseller do it?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
What do you think?
They better do more cleaning than we do.
I would
I
hope
mean,
so.
it takes
Oh,
me like
yeah.
an hour, I just run around and, you know, like you weren't here last Friday, and I just vacuumed real quick and cleaned the bathroom and it
That's
was
probably
done.
about $45 worth, I would imagine.
Nice, huh?
You'll sign it.
I don't have a problem paying somebody to clean.
Do you do
It's
houses?
already on.
Sorry.
I don't like to clean.
I don't either, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I have two part-time people that don't wanna. There you go, Josh, that's your,
My favorite sheet.
yes.
This is the quick and dirty rundown. Highlands Fuel, oh, it's just a different name for urban.
I actually did that AP.
Oh, on this one, actually, yeah, that's great. On this one, we're all in lowercase, which is okay.
I don't even have a name here.
Yeah, exactly.
I've been signing Stephen, no.
He won't mind.
Okay, so not that we're gonna take time to do this.
There you go.
What's that? This is just so that I'll
These are
familiarize
just
myself
the checks
with what
that
we're
were
spending
issued.
money on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is something I can do on my own time, I should probably do that, but I don't know any of the stuff, so.
We're gonna have regular monthly payments that we have to pay out every month, you're gonna see them
Okay,
on one or the other warrant.
Sheriff's Department, rescuing,
Yes.
Simon's Operations runs our sewer system.
Medical insurance, which is
Exactly,
huge,
Blue-
like
Blue Cross Blue Shield.
$12,000
That
a
one was on
month,
Yeah,
so, yeah,
and that covers
everybody.
all
Yes.
employees.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
And then there's a ton of small stuff, and
Right.
then there's,
including us? Medical insurance?
no,
No, I didn't think so.
No,
no, unfortunately.
but you do get a stipend.
Yeah. It'll cover a month of your medical insurance, I'm
That'll
sure.
go towards the 760 a month I get VHAP, right?
Yeah,
Do
exactly.
they get paid in advance or after the fact?
After,
After,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
yeah.
I know that was a selfish question, I was just curious, but yeah.
No,
No,
it's a
I've
good
asked it
question.
for,
It's a
no,
good
and I,
question.
actually, what would be nice is if we could pay into the system.
Right.
We can't, I've looked into that.
Okay, all right, okay,
So,
yep.
All right, other business, you got anything?
So this might be up Dave's alley.
I'm doing that again, just because there was some
Did
really
you sign up for
interesting
it?
stuff in there, yeah, I'm doing the Rutland one.
That's
Or wait a
on a
minute.
Friday.
Oh, it is
right?
Rutland.
Yeah.
No, Saturday.
Let's see, Saturday.
Is it a Saturday? Yeah.
That's not what I have.
What's that say?
Registration.
This is
Oh,
like, this is
registration,
like
yeah.
school for people on select boards?
Yeah,
Is that what this is?
but
Yeah.
I swear that's not the date.
It's
I had.
interesting, you might wanna think about it.
Yeah.
They do several of them a year, and they do select board 1 and select board 2 and all sorts of things when
And
you're
you
ready
pay
for it. And they pay for it, and mileage.
And where,
Yes,
it's where, what's
yeah.
Rutland, okay.
But you do need to be signed up, so.
And if you wanna do that,
Okay.
you just let me know, or
And that's
Alyssa.
by this Friday.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll think about it.
Here's the other one for economic development, that's up in Burke.
Yeah,
Can I keep this?
Do you need
yeah,
that?
and
Dave?
now, once you're,
I'm just looking, can I see that for a second? Because I swear.
Once
I had a
you're-
date on it.
officially in this role, you will receive these at home. as
Got
well.
it, okay.
Or in your mailbox here.
In the mailbox here, yep.
I get them at home too, I don't know.
Oh, that's weird. And there's another, town officers education conferences, Lake Maury, April 4th. Laura, this is right up our alley, you and I, but,
I have something else going on April 4th. This is what I'm doing. not this.
Okay.
That's what I'm doing,
All right, nice,
okay?
okay. So we can give that to David.
You can have that one back. I did that last year, I think, and I think I did this.
You did select board institute last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, you know, people who have been doing it forever to people who are first timers go and they talk about, you know, it runs down some of the basics, and it's an opportunity to ask questions.
Probably a really good thing for me to do, actually.
It is a good thing to do.
Really good thing
It's,
for me to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I would like to do this for a while with you guys first, so I can
Right.
go there and have an idea of what we're even talking about.
although they don't assume, you know, 3/4 of the people at this will be in your shoes.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, then maybe
Yeah.
I will.
It's a really good networking opportunity.
Something I'm
I know
gonna
you're
have
trying
to
to
learn
build
to.
in that
I haven't got a text for 5 days, okay? I'm not a networker, okay?
I know, right?
Okay, so you good on other business?
None,
And we don't need an executive session?
no.
Okay. And our next meeting date is March 27th, which is next Wednesday
Regular,
at 5:30
Yes.
here. And then from there, it'll be every other Wednesday.
Got it.
Yep.
Yep, okay.
Okay. Unless there's anything else, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.